Evolution Skeleton Barrel in a nutshell. Skeleton Barrel will be the next evolution coming to Clash Royale. You can find it in the Diamond Pass, which gives me a good excuse to beg for money by plugging my creator code. For the first time in a while, the stats are not identical to the regular card. Oh, and it's a 2-cycle evolution. It has 2 buffed stats, the first one being the more overall HP, where it basically survives a tiny bit longer than a skeleton barrel. But it will still die to fireball, so I don't think any major interactions will change from that HP buff. I believe the major interaction change is against Duchess, as it will get death damage on the tower when left untanked for, when the regular barrel would get shredded and die before it gets close enough. The second stat buff comes as a form of death damage buff, as it's now high enough to kill minions, so that's something to worry about. Its main gimmick is that there is now 2 barrels in one, which basically means you get double the skeletons and double the death damage. The increased death damage is for each individual barrel, so given that you have 2 of them, that means you can get around 4 times the damage of a normal skeleton barrel. To put this into perspective, having both barrels combined will slightly do more damage than Royal Delivery, which is nuts. The first barrel triggers after losing 25% of its HP, and the second one falls when it dies. This means that using a small spell on it would take out the first stage, which could maybe make it easier to deal with. Rage is the only exception here because it deals less damage than Snowball and Zap because, it speeds up troops. If it reaches the tower without triggering the first barrel, then both of them would drop at the same time, giving you 14 skeletons on the tower. Now, arguably, this might sound like a bad idea in every single situation cause letting them drop separately means they would have to use 2 spells on them to take them out. But one thing to note is that if you get your barrel on the tower unharmed, even if they spell it away, you would get double the death damage instead of only one of them. Obviously, this very high death damage means that you would want to take it down instead of waiting for it to pop and spelling it away. Splash ranged attackers are probably gonna be your best bet because their attack will clean up the first wave of the skeletons. Like right now, spells went from the main counter to useless because you have to pick which barrel to spell out. You could use 2 spells, but I low-key would not recommend. And besides being an overcommitment, using 2 spells would have you eat up like 300 in death damage, which isn't ideal. Some spells, and by some I mean only poison, can work out by fully defending it without taking any damage from the death damage or the skeletons. Earthquake on its own can delete both waves of the skeletons with perfect timing. Is it ideal? Not really, but it's helpful in a pinch. Delivery used to fully counter Skeleton Barrel, and that's a play that in my opinion is very underutilized. After the Evo, it can still do fine, but it will require some assistance from a spirit or something like that to be perfect defense. Buildings, however, are completely different story because they pull it to the range of the second tower. This makes buildings such as Tesla capable of fully shutting it down with 0 damage on any of your towers when placed perfectly. Even those buildings that don't target air can do well because this cannon would be taking out skeletons before the second barrel pops. I tested so many buildings and I think all of them except Elixir Pump can fully counter it, though it's not worth using stuff like Inferno Tower. Playing it will be slightly different because I think with the Evo it sucks as a tank for other bait cards. It basically just gives them a way to justify using a free spell on the first half of the Evo and making the second half easier to counter. However, it surely will still be good on bait decks. It will just get treated like Evo wall breakers when you can send them alone and they would put a ton of pressure on the opponent. Mega Knight bait decks can also find some benefit from it, given they already run the regular skeleton barrel. They have a miner, so they can do the push where there's a barrel being fully tanked for, and that's extremely tricky to take out for heavy decks. Or they can use it in a Mega Knight push with bats, as them zapping the bats would activate the barrel and puts more pressure on them instantly. Giant skeleton clone seems like a bad idea since clones give normal copy of the Evo cards, but if you do this zap bait trick and clone immediately after, let me pause here for a second, you will get 14 skeletons down, you will have 2 barrels unpopped, so that's another 14 skeletons, so you basically get the full Evo value minus 1.5 death damage explosions. But that isn't everything. I feel like this card is more defensive than offensive, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like if you have a clump of, let's say, a fully healed Evo bats, you can just drop it on them as it will kill them and continue going to the tower. Nearly any swarm threat can become a defend and counter push for an equal trade situation, which is just crazy. And even against bigger pushes like double explosions and the skeleton dropping can be very devastating against certain support troops. For King Tower activations, it slightly has more HP, but still not enough to make Duchess and Cannoneer activations possible. With Princess and Chef, it's doable, but you will have to either eat a lot of skeleton damage or take them out in a way that doesn't ruin the King activation. You know what's gonna be fun? That 0.1 elixir suspicious push boss bandit deck with Evo Skeleton Barrel. I can't wait to face this, it's gonna be amazing. Woohoo!